thank you so much. I know how busy you are, but I've been dying to talk to you, and I know that you've been, when you give your talks and your interviews, you frequently reference Augusta Baker. So I knew I had to, get you on the record formally, at least in my capacity as the Augusta Baker chair, to talk a little bit about Augusta and your work as the librarian. So I wanted to actually just talk to you a little bit about what you've been doing in the last couple of weeks. You've had Lizzo, you've had Justice Brown Jackson come to the library for her or during her confirmation process. Why is this kind of outreach important?
Well, thank you for having me in discussion about Augusta Baker and also some other notable
Absolutely.
Female librarians of color. And the things that you just mentioned, the events that mentioned, were two examples of outreach to a broader audience and community than the Library of Congress has had. And for instance, there's so many collections, and most people didn't know that the Library of Congress has the world's largest collection of a single instrument, the flute.
Mm-hmm.
And a young African-American librarian in the music department 3 years ago brought it to our attention that there's this young woman who's very popular, and she's a classically trained flutist. And wouldn't it be wonderful if she could come and see the collection? So we started the outreach to her several years ago, but it was only until we used something that we've expanded our use of to get people to know about our collections, social media.
Absolutely.
And made that contact through there, and she responded, and it just took off. And it was so heartening to see her experience the collection and share her joy in the collection with so many others. And then Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson wanted to have a commemoration of her being put on the bench, basically as Supreme Court, at the Library of Congress, because she wanted to have the author of a book about Justice Constance Baker Motley, Dean Nagin, to talk about the book and her influence on her. And so it was just a wonderful, like, two bookends, popular culture, one part of the collection, and then a commemoration of an unsung hero in the Justice Department. So it really emphasized to us at the Library of Congress that we need to do more of that. We need to let people know what we have and also make it relevant to what they're doing now.
Yeah, for sure. And it's been, wonderful, because we always talk about representation matters. Yes. And so these are really happy and shining moments for us to see ourselves in Washington at the Library of Congress, on the Supreme Court. So it's been a lot of fun to watch.
Good. We want it to be a little fun, not.
Yeah, I think that came across. Yeah. I think some people weren't happy, but they're never going to be happy. But I think a lot of people were so happy to see just the joy, of it, and being fun and being light.
That you mentioned some people weren't happy. It did bring up some issues about equity and elitism and classism and all types of things in terms of who can use the nation's library and the world's largest library. Everyone can use it. And so it could be a person of color could use the collection, and that also be celebrated at the Library of Congress. And so even though sometimes it's disturbing when people express those types of sentiments, it's also a motivator for us to get out even more.
Yeah, absolutely. So that leads me into our discussion about Augusta and some other notable librarians. So I know that you're familiar with Augusta's trajectory, and she was the first Black woman to do so many things at New York Public. And you were the first Black woman to serve as Librarian of Congress. Tracy Hall is the first Black woman to serve as the Executive Director at ALA. What does that mean? That we're still having so many firsts, and how do you relate our present time in your position and Tracy's position with what Augusta did so many decades ago?
Augusta Baker was a trailblazer in so many ways. And I started as a children's librarian, a library associate actually, in 1975. And Augusta Baker had just retired as the head of children's service at the New York Public Library. That was an enormous deal. So I knew about her coming into the profession. I graduated in 1977, but she was already a legend. At that point, she was the first Black president of the children's division of ALA. She produced a groundbreaking bibliography, The Black Experience in Children's Books. And so as a children's librarian coming in, that was something that you held dear because you needed that. And so just knowing about her, and she chaired the Newberry and the Caldecott Committee. She was just something and a real role model. And so when you have those role models and you have those trailblazers, and now you have Tracy heading up ALA, it gives that old adage of you can't be what you can't see. Absolutely. It gives aspiration. Well, if she can do it or she's into it. So you don't want to be, it's okay to be the first, but as they say, you don't want to be the last. Mm-hmm. And so by getting in those positions, showing that it can happen, it's very important. So about Augusta Baker, a master storyteller. And when I took my storytelling classes in library school, Augusta Baker was the gold standard. So I never got to meet her. And that's something I regret, but I knew all about her and looked at interviews and read interviews. And as I know, you know, she's in Women of Color and Librarianship. Yes. A wonderful interview with her in real time, and a tribute to her by Dr. Henrietta Smith, who taught at the University of South Florida Library School. So Augusta Baker, she did teach at Columbia too. Yes, yes. So she just, everything that she did, all of the awards, she was just outstanding in terms of being someone that could show you that you could do it. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Are there other women of color, Black women in librarianship that served as role models? Well, I started out my career at the Chicago Public Library, and Chicago Public Library had the legendary Vivian G. Harsh. Yes. And there's the collection that's named after her. There was a, quote, colored branch, as there were many public libraries at that time in northern cities. They literally, some were even called that. And she started the collection of African-American history and culture. And she was a role model in the past, because she had passed actually, but she was legendary in terms of what she did and how she had to fight at times to get that collection, to protect that collection. So I had that coming into Chicago Public and knowing about her. So you had Augusta Baker, who, in terms of children's librarianship and going into that in library school, but also working at Chicago Public. And then I heard about and knew about Virginia Lacey Jones, who was down at Atlanta U, second Black woman to get her PhD from University of Chicago. I was at school then, so I knew about her. And then, as I was very fortunate to work with, I think they're legendary librarians, Annie Lee Carroll at Chicago Public Library. She was very, probably remember her. And Dorothy Evans who was in a branch and stayed as a children's librarian, but she was on the model of Augusta Baker,
Yeah.
Physically and temperamentally, and she was one of the best storytellers, could charm. Anyway, so I had the people that I worked with right there. And then the commissioner of Chicago Public Library, Amanda Rudd, was someone who, that was quite something to have a Black woman to be the commissioner at that time. But also Lucille Thomas at Brooklyn Public Library was someone that I really admired and looked to, and she was a mentor to me. And then I went to Enoch Pratt Free Library, where Anna Curry had been the first African-American and female director. And she also mentored two current directors of libraries, major public libraries, Dr. Rhea Lawson in Houston, and also Joanne Mondowney in Detroit, which gets me to Clara Stanton Jones, first African-American to be president of ALA and first director of Detroit Public Library. So then now you have Sasha Orange, who's just retired, but very active and executive in American Library Association. Of course, Tracy Hall, the new director, and also special librarians will remember and know Vivian Hewitt, who who's the first president of SLA and was in special librarianship, and she just passed at over 100 years old. But she was very active, and that was important for us to be in that arena as well, not just the public libraries and academic libraries, but special libraries. So those are just a few, and of course, Mary Biblo, very active in ALA and just a firebrand.
Yeah, absolutely. I was at the SLA conference this summer, and they did a tribute to Vivian Hewitt. So I was very, very glad to see that. Yeah. So you've described such an amazing legacy, and we hope that that legacy will continue. We hope that our numbers of diverse professionals in the field will continue to improve as well. And with talking about the wonderful women of the profession, any of the gentlemen that were particularly inspiring?
Oh, there were so many. Robert Wedgeworth, the first executive director, and he mentored me along the way. E.J. Josie, of course, and also Wendell Ray at University of Pittsburgh, who was very close friends and colleagues with Vivian Hewitt. So there was that network. And then Andrew Venable, who was head of Cleveland Public Library and had been at DC Public, Hardy Franklin. There were a number.
Very good. So talking about all of these legends, if you will, those who have paved the road for folks like me and then the students that I teach, how would you describe your philosophy, if you have one, of Black librarianship, and how has it changed? What's going well? What do we need to be working on?
And you notice I keep bringing up books.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
That's help it.
Yeah.
I can't help it. But that I would definitely recommend, and you probably have shared it with your students, because it was a celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Black Caucus of ALA, and they did a reprisal of the Black Librarian in America that E.J. Josie had edited it first, and now with all kinds of updates. They interview Robert Wedgeworth. They go into some hidden figures in librarianship, of Black female that people didn't know about. Adele Logan, who was connected to the Alexander family, and ending up with what can we do now, and the challenges and all types of chapters. So the theme that seems to run through not only this book, but discussions of Black librarianship is centered on service, that you often find with Black librarians in whatever setting they're in. The idea that this is an opportunity for us to serve our communities, be they on the campus, be they in cities and towns, being a representative in professional organizations, because we know that information is power. And that's something that has been emphasized for so many years. And we know that we can be the trusted guides in these settings for people who look like us. And that, I think, is the unifying part of, if you wanted to, for instance, define Black librarianship, it is that your service.
Yes.
And you're able to use your skills that you've learned to help others.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the examples that I use with students and folks at conferences to highlight Black librarianship is when you were at Enoch Pratt and Mulaney Townsend Diggs, who was the branch manager during the uprising after Freddie Gray's murder, and just thinking about how she protected her community. And then when she was asked about it, she said, "Oh, of course, that's what I do. You know, I'm here for my community." So I think that is a shining example of what you describe and the service that Black librarians provide.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned Mulaney, because she's someone that's still doing it now with the Baltimore County Library System and several branches, and taking that same dedication to community service in another setting and spreading it and mentoring others. And she's just a living example right now of what we need to keep doing. Especially in the age of misinformation.
Yes.
Something that Tracy talks about, digital inequities.
Yes.
That were put in stark relief during the pandemic. There were so many of my public library colleagues that said that it was heartbreaking when we knew that our communities needed us the most, especially with virtual learning, when young people had to switch to that. They knew that if circumstances had been different, their doors would have been flooded with young people trying to get on those computers to do their homework, and they could have helped them navigate. And so they had all kinds of innovative things that they did in terms of loaning hotspots, taking their mobile units into communities so you could get the Wi-Fi. But they knew that they would have been the place in so many communities that those young people, challenged young people, could have gone for their virtual learning.
Yeah. Well, we're back now, and I think hopefully we're making up for lost time, and hopefully we won't have another situation where we're unable to reach our communities like during COVID for seemed like an eternity, but yeah.
Well, our digital front doors were open.
Oh, absolutely.
And there was so much activity there.
Yes.
And that's going to continue as well.
Oh, yeah. Even as, someone in the profession, I started going to more library programs because I could just tune in. So I certainly took advantage of that as well. So when we mentioned Mulaney and we mentioned all of the wonderful folks who have blazed the trail for us, what are your thoughts on recruitment and retention? How are we going to keep this trajectory going in the future in librarianship in terms of Black librarianship and also librarians of color?
Recruitment, of course, is vital. And Dr. Josie was a master at that. He would go to the HBCUs and sit and work with the librarians there and have almost career day, and did that and was very active. And we need to get back on those campuses and do that and have paid internships. And I emphasize paid internships when you have the loan forgiveness, finding ways that we can help defray the cost of graduate school, because that is something else that can be a burden. The Spectrum Initiative is very good. However, it doesn't cover everything.
Right.
And so working with and being very active with the information schools, iSchools and library schools, to make sure that we are doing and going where the students are and catching them early, not in their senior year, but when they're sophomore, earlier, so they can start planning and we can start being of assistance. And then retention. That's where it can be difficult because they might graduate. I had a student when I was teaching at Pitt that came back to library school because he said, and so others, E.J. Josie was there, Wendell Ray, had a quite activist group. And he got into a public library environment and he said he went to a meeting and the director of the library system was there and he went up, he was very enthusiastic and he got brushed off. In fact, that's when I decided to go back into, instead of being at library school, it's like, maybe you need to get into administration, get back into that and be that so that you're supporting young people of color who are coming out full of ideas that we've given them, but then they meet resistance in administrations and things like that. So the retention, mentoring, and making sure that we reach out to the younger, and I say younger, but maybe new to the profession, not always age related, people who are coming into the profession because it's a very conservative profession and a lot of tradition, and you might not see yourself in some of the management positions. And so that's a part that I think we need to work on. And so Sasha and Tracy, in fact, in the Black Librarian in America, have a chapter on mentoring and the importance of that, and also mentoring in the professional associations, encouraging people to get on committees, to be part of it, even bylaws, not the most exciting, but bylaws, because you learn a lot.
But very important.
I learned a lot in fact, being on the board of the children's section of ALA. That's when I learned about budgets.
Okay. Yeah.
You learn a lot. You might not have it in your day-to-day job, but through the association, you can learn quite a bit. So that retention and working on that we don't lose people from the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So how can we move forward with Augusta's legacy? And I often talk about Charlamagne Hill Rollins, who was her contemporary at
I'm so good. Chicago Public. I almost forgot. How could I forget Charlamagne Rollins?
Yeah.
Christmas Gift, all of the things that she did too.
And I tell the students, we have wonderful things like we need diverse books and those types of initiatives now, but Charlamagne and Augusta and their contemporaries, they were the forerunners for we need diverse books. They were some of our earliest social justice advocates. So how do we move forward in their essence, if you will?
Well, the Coretta Scott King Awards and that entire effort has been very, very helpful. And I remember Deb Taylor, my colleague, who's very active in Coretta Scott King, and that one of her proudest moments was when the winner of the Coretta Scott King, I think it was Bud Not Buddy, won the Newbery at the same time for the same year. And that was like, okay, this is what we've been working on. So getting involved, like I say, those committees, getting involved and making sure that they're strong, because the Coretta Scott King Awards celebrated their 50th anniversary recently. So getting the sponsorship for those and getting the word out, and sponsoring the author. So, and with Nikki Giovanni's new picture book, we had her here.
I saw that
book launch at the Library of Congress. So I'm trying to do things at the Library of Congress to make sure we have representation. Our youth ambassador for young people's literature. There was a tradition of Walter Dean Myers was one of the first. and took it to another level. And we had two since I've been here that have been just so exciting. Jacqueline Woodson and Jason Reynolds, who was even on a popular late night show talking about representation and that. So
Right.
being supportive, knowing that, yes, there are more books are coming out, but you can never have enough.
No,
I
never.
just participated in a session with the authors of young adult literature, the book Blackout, and they have
Yes,
a new one.
yes.
So wonderful. And to see that. So whenever we have an opportunity to showcase the authors and illustrators
Yeah.
of color, we've got to do it.
Perfect. And my last question for you, in addition to the library that you just held up, what else are you reading?
Oh my goodness. There's so many.
It's an unfair question for a librarian, I know.
Oh no, but it's okay because I have one right here that I can't wait to get into.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's doing quite well.
Yeah, all right.
Commercially. And I don't know if you know this author.
No, I have to look that up. Okay.
Well, this is, and part of the reason why on the back it says, if you let a Black girl loose in a library, you might not recognize the woman who emerges. And that's from this book. So it's
Isn't that
about
perfect?
A young person, the two women friends, one in writers, and about Toni Morrison and everything. And I'm just delving into it and getting into it. And it's really something that I'm looking forward to.
Lovely, lovely.
And there are more.
Oh, I know, there's plenty more, always more. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and I'm, doing my fangirl to talk to you. And
Oh no, I'm
yes.
one of yours, so don't worry. As my grandmother said, used to say, it's mutual between us.
Yes. And my mother says hello.
Oh, cool.
Yes. And she said, today is the day you're going to talk to the librarian. I said, yes. So
We're
all
all
big
so
fans.
glad because I think we're so fortunate though, we have that legacy of Charlotte. When you mentioned Charlemagne Rollins, I was like, oh my gosh, how could I forget? But we have that collective memory. We have their, they paved the way for us.
Oh,
and it was a lot harder then.
Yes. I just had a colleague. She was able to get some of Charlemagne's archives from Chicago Public. I'm trying to get Augusta's archives digitized here. And just, even going through them to get things organized, you could see, that they were Spitfires. And I mean that in the best possible way. But you also see how much they had to fight and how they had to be, assertive and things that we, struggle with the labels, if you will, but they had to do it in order to get their job done and get to the next level and get those bibliographies published.
Let me know how you're going on that because Andrea Pinckney,
yes,
with Scholastic, is very interested in these types of things.
Okay.
And there's an exhibit that they have about Black children's authors and illustrators, but it would be wonderful to do something on Black children's librarians.
I love it. I'd be happy to funnel her some information. Yeah.
Yes. So
sure.
Send it to me and I'll tell her that. And because I think they were the ones that were there. Augusta Baker, in her oral history, mentioned that she didn't see many Black librarians.
Right.
And Clara Stanton Jones said she didn't see any, and the librarians who were in the library just kind of ignored her. She didn't even know, they didn't even tell her there was story time. She said she was just there. She loved libraries, but she was just there. And so the difference it makes when there is a children's librarian there to welcome the children and to be there. That's what Augusta Baker epitomized.
Yes, love it. Yeah, I know I didn't see my first Black librarian until college. And Miss Thelma Tate and
yes,
was doing a work study, and I worked in the library where she was, and she would come tell me about IFLA and all of these things. I had no idea what she was talking about. But she kept at it, and next thing you know, went to library school. So the representation absolutely does matter.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll keep it going.
Yes, we will. Yes, ma'am. All righty. Thank you so much. I'm
Thanks to your mom.
so great. Yes,
We
she's
want
gonna
to
be
hear
so
from you
excited.
soon, though, about the
Yeah.
Augusta Baker papers.
Yeah,
Charlotte
absolutely.
Rollins.
Mm-hmm.
And are there some others that you think? What about Lucille Thomas and
I have,
Brooklyn Public has some.
yeah. So there's an article about Lucille Thomas in that special issue that I did for Libraries, Culture, History, and Society. And I will go back and see if how much of the archives they use to see if that would be available for Andrea.
Good.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
if you could send it to me, because Andrea I want to pitch that to her.
Yeah. And Effie Lee Morris was also in there. So I will look.
Effie Lee Morris.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yes. San Francisco.
Yep.
And can imagine how hard that was.
Yes, indeed.
Effie Lee Morris. Oh, so could you send me a copy of that?
I sure will.
Article?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll send everything to Terry, and we'll get Andrea something.
Right. Maybe we could, I'll send you something to say, how's this look before I send it to her.
Okay. Yeah, that's
and
perfect.
We'll do it together. And we'd like to talk to you about Scholastic doing something on that, because the person that Scholastic was really supportive of was Virginia Hamilton.
Yes.
Library of Congress has her papers.
Yes.
So in terms of a Black author and that, but why Scholastic would support something about the children's librarians too.
That
promoted their books.
Yes, that would be amazing. Yeah, I will certainly get right on that for you.
All right. Well, get some lunch.
Yes. And thank you again. And I'm going to go get the book you showed me too.
Okay. Miss Chloe, because there's that.
Miss Chloe. All right. Yeah, I love it. That's perfect.
It was her memoir of her literary friendship with Toni Morrison.
Okay.
And that's, so I think you'll enjoy it.
Very good.
Best to your mom.
Thank you. And please thank Terry again for me.
I will.
All right. Bye-bye. Talk soon. All right. Thank you.